Good morning, everybody. Glad to have you here. If you will, like, share, comment on the post. I would appreciate that. And then if you are in a position where you can, follow along. We will be in the 11th chapter of Acts in verse 25. And it says, So Barnabas went to Tarsus to look for Saul. And when he found him, he brought him to Antioch. For a whole year they met with the church and taught a great many people. And in Antioch, the disciples were first called Christians. Honestly, you may think at first, and that really the teaching is kind of slim here. It just seems like kind of some informational passage of scripture, like in a maybe in a play that told you where everybody is on the stage, or how the stage directions. And there's not a huge lesson, like maybe like in some passages, but I think there are a couple things that do deserve are worth our attention. Here we see that as the Gentiles are coming to know Christ, Barnabas realizes we need some help. And so he's needing someone that will come in and disciple, someone that will come in and train and teach these people and encourage them in their walk with the Lord, to continue, as it says in verse 23, to follow him with devoted hearts. And so Barnabas goes looking for Saul of Tarsus. He says, I'll go find some help, and I'll go find Saul. And the word here seems like he had a little trouble finding him at first, but he eventually tracks him down, and he brings him back. And so for a year, they meet and teach a great many people. And in Antioch, the disciples were first called Christians. And a couple of things that I think are important to us here is one, is we see the importance of discipleship. We see the importance of growth in our Christian life, of experienced believers taking new believers in, younger believers, immature believers, and walking with them personally, not just personally. I think this is pretty well a pretty common opinion among many in leadership in the church today. Is part of the issue we have in our church today, is that we have failed in this area. We have failed in the area of developing new converts. Over time, we have, there maybe some more than others, but we have really emphasized evangelism and reaching people for the gospel, but we have failed miserably then in training them up and then sending them out to repeat the process. I know of one church planter who was in Canada, who their church had a policy that you could not be any type of leader in the church until you were a grandparent in the faith. And what that meant was you had to be saved. Then you had to have went out and led somebody to the Lord, or at least had a very active part in bringing them to know Christ. Then you had to disciple them and teach them and bring them along to the point where then they had went out and led somebody to the Lord. So they called it being a grandparent in the faith. And so we see here the value, the importance that the early church took in training up their believers, that for a year they worked with these converted Gentiles, that they stayed with them. And then the second time, the second thing that is important here is in Antioch, the disciples were first called Christians. The word, as we think about that, what it means, that in Antioch, the people who watched the lives of these believers decided they need a special name. We need to call them something different. We're going to call them Christian. It's a name that was given to the believers by the unsaved at Antioch. Not a name they took themselves, but it was a name they were given. It was given to the followers of Christ. Curiously, this word Christian is only found two other times in the New Testament. And eventually then the Christians took that name and took it on for themselves. Many believe that it was originally maybe kind of meant as a almost as an insult to these people. But whatever it was, the point is their life was different enough that the people who watched them felt they needed to be called something. They needed a title, they needed a name, some word of description that they could put on to these followers of Jesus Christ, something that they could again label them as, and say, you know, those people over there, they're not just from Antioch, they're not just Gentiles, they're not just from this culture, they are Christians. There's something about them. We can label them as Christians. And I just want to leave you with that thought today, that if your family, your coworkers, your neighbors were looking for some label to put on you, to put on your church, to put on our fellowship today, wonder what it would be. Would it be Christian, something that basically means Christ-like? Would it be, what would the term be? You can decide that. What would the term be? What label would the people who know you best give you? Well, that's something to really think about, and probably a little humbling. All right, you have a great day, and we'll see you here tomorrow.